Hi friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Fiona and I am a full-time artist. And on this channel, I like to take you with me on my artistic journey, whether that means working on projects here in my studio, going out to see cool art exhibits, buying art supplies and sharing my haul with you, basically any art related content. So if that sounds like something you're into, please like and subscribe. It really helps me out a lot. This is something that has been requested multiple times and I am finally going to do it, and that is a sketchbook tour. So I guess I had this weird hesitation about it because I'm an abstract artist and most of the sketchbook tours that at least I've seen on YouTube have been from illustrators, and I thought that maybe people would find that more compelling, but at the same time, I want to be a champion of abstract artists and understand that this is a sketchbook. This is something you wouldn't typically show people. For instance, this sketchbook I didn't make to show on a video. This was a sketchbook I made before I had a YouTube channel. This was just me traveling. I did a 6-week solo trip around Japan. I spent a week in South Korea, and then I did another week and a half in Thailand with my husband. So it's actually 2 sketchbooks. It's a larger one and a smaller one because I kind of filled this one up and then I bought this. But it kind of composes the whole trip. So I thought I would just show you both. Like this one, it's only a few pages, but that way I can kind of take you from the start of the trip to the end of the trip. But I hope you enjoy it. I've never done a sketchbook tour. I've seen them on YouTube and people just kind of flip through it and kind of voice over what was going on. So I hope I can get the same vibe going. And once again, I'm an abstract artist, so I'm not really documenting things I see directly on my trip, but maybe things I was experiencing, and I don't know. We'll see. I haven't looked at these in years. The trip was in the spring of 2018. So it's been quite some time. But let's jump into it, and I hope you enjoy it. Actually, before we get into this, I'm gonna measure these just so I can tell you a little bit more about them. So let's see. So this one, which was the one I bought for the trip, it's a moleskin, and it is 5 inches wide by 8¼ inches tall. And then little guy that I got on the trip, it says MD paper made in Japan. So I bought this and it was a pack of 3. And it is, let's see, 4 inches by 5¾ inches. So you can see a comparison here. This is what they look like. Anyway, let's get into it. Okay, friends, this is voiceover Fiona now. So when I took this footage, my original plan was that I would give individual stories, since I journaled on this trip, alongside each sketchbook image. But as I recorded that, I noticed the video was ridiculously long, and some of the stories may have not been so interesting. So anyway, what I'm going to do now, editing style here, is do a quick flip through, so anyone who just wants to see what all the drawings look like, you can see that. And then I will go back and sort of pick out individual stories that I thought were interesting pertaining to my trip and that you guys might enjoy. Yeah, so here I'm pointing out that this was the first sketch that I did when I arrived in Tokyo, and how it's on like the second page. So as you will quickly see, I did not go in any sort of chronological order. I just would sort of work through the sketchbook, flip it around. Sometimes you'll get a double spread, sometimes there won't be much of anything. Just really quick, the writing on this page, we had gone to Japan because it was my parents' 40th wedding anniversary, and they wanted us to celebrate it together since my brother lives in Tokyo. So we all kind of went there and met up and celebrated that. This little writing here is because my dad wanted a handwritten card to my mom, and he thought my handwriting was better than his. So I was just doing a test there. But I'm not going to read that because it's probably going to make me cry right now. Anyway, So here we go, just quickly flipping through. As you can see, some are more colorful than others. When I had arrived in Tokyo, the only colors I had in my sketchbook were the red, white, blue, and black. And that's kind of the main palette that I used. But then I kind of got bored of it near the end. So when I went to Korea, I ended out picking up some pens, and as you can see, it became much more colorful. But yeah, I think I had green as well there, but I don't remember using it so much. But there's like blank spreads. You can see there's water damage to this thing. I was not precious at all. You can also see that I would always want to work on the right side, so I would kind of turn the sketchbook around depending on which spread I was working on. But as we go through it, I will turn things to its proper orientation, and we can look at it the way that I had sketched it. But yeah, I did a lot of drawing in coffee shops, so you can see lots and lots of water damage. But that's okay. I wasn't precious with it, and the point was just to sort of get those emotions out on the page. This is one of my favorite sketches right here, so I'll definitely talk about that. Yeah, we'll go back to that one. Another blank spread. Great, Fiona. I remember that one too. Yeah, there you can see the pink coming in. That was definitely from Korea. And yep, just some plain black and white ones. I kind of mixed it up. That was definitely from Japan, from that color palette. It's interesting looking back on this. It's been so long. Some are full page, some are just bits and pieces. But that's that. So we're going to go back to the start. And I think I'll start with the very first one because that just makes the most logical sense to me. All right, so let's look at my journaling, which was on Instagram, by the way. So if there's any stories here that you're interested to learn more about that I don't read off here in this, you can go way back in my Instagram to 2018 and see that. It's at FionaC.NYC, and I will link it in the description. But anyway, I wrote, I made it to Tokyo. My brother is very graciously letting me stay with him in his adorable apartment in Harajuku, arguably my favorite district in Tokyo. I decided to take advantage of the beautiful 70-degree weather this morning and chill on his balcony to do some work in my sketchbook. I rarely draw in sketchbooks, unless I'm traveling. I think the last time I did, it was when I was in Amsterdam last fall. I just never do it in my studio at home. Anyway, I hope to fill this baby with sketches during this trip. And if you want to see more, feel free to follow along on my stories. I will be posting all the weirdness along the way. Love to everybody who has reacted so far. So just to give a little bit of context, I had just quit my job at Kate Spade. I had been working there as an art director, and I had quit, I think, in April. And then in May, I made the trip over, like I said, to celebrate my parents' wedding anniversary. My parents ended out, after a week of being in Tokyo, going on their own trip. They went to Kyoto and Osaka. And then I did 2 weeks in Tokyo, and then when my parents left to fly back to America, I ended out doing a 6-week solo travel down south, then to Korea and Thailand. So that's how that ended up happening. But anyway, when I arrived, super jet lagged, but my parents were like, nope, we're going to get dinner, then we're going to go check out Shibuya Crossing. So all in all, I don't think I got home till after midnight that day. And I was so tired, I just fell asleep. The next morning, my brother said, oh, did the earthquake wake you up? And I said, I didn't even feel it. I just slept through it. That's how exhausted I was. Anywho, we're going to move on to the next sketch now. And I wrote, sat down to have an iced coffee and do a quick sketch. But then I said to myself to get out of the New York rush mode. I rarely sit and just have a coffee. Always taking it to go, hurrying around. So I sat longer and enjoyed the atmosphere. Classical music was playing, an older gentleman sat down next to me to read a book while enjoying his coffee. A delivery man dropped off some goods. Just quiet moments in this small coffee shop in a small alley next to the madness of Takeshita-dori. A lot of people describe Tokyo Crush, which is the overwhelming feeling of the city. But I'm not sure if it's because I'm from New York that it's easy to avoid that feeling, and finding moments like this would combat any of that. So, yeah, I think that this is good to sort of give the frame of mind that I was in at the time, that I was just still New York rush mode and learning to slow down. All right, let's go into the next sketch. So this sketch looked different, and I'll put an image of it here so you can see. I think what I did was I went in later and added color to it on another day when I was in Korea. But anywho, what I wrote was, this morning I got lost on my way to Blue Bottle Coffee and I ended up wandering down a random street to where there was a Lexus Concept pop-up coffee shop. Random, I know, but it did the job. While working on today's sketch, I had the word futari in mind, which means two. I imagined the two shapes having a conversation. Then by fate, my adventures have took me to two places today. The traditional Nezu Museum, at which I snapped this, followed by the modern Muay Art Museum. In the slideshow, you'll see views from both. First, the Japanese garden at the Nezu Museum, and second, the city view from the Muay Art Museum. You would think they couldn't be any different, but the exhibits and spaces were drawing connections to each other. The architecture of the Nezu Museum is super modern, but the garden houses traditional Japanese tea houses. Meanwhile, the main exhibit at the Muay Art Museum was all about Japanese architecture, the new, the old, plus the hybrid. And that's just sort of how things are here in Japan in general. There's a sense of flow. So I do remember that during the trip, there was this distinct feeling of this hyper-modern, almost futuristic place met with very, very traditional, sort of stuck in the old ways, and it was constantly colliding against each other. I think especially Tokyo represented that to me, but any of the cities there sort of felt that way. Anyway, moving on. Actually, let's talk about this one next, because this one's kind of interesting. After visiting the Muay Art Museum, I headed over to Azabu Juban. It is a small trendy area with lots of cute cafes, so I decided to try one out. This place had me at their princess cake. I was comfortable in my little booth drawing when a group of men was seated near me. They were having an intense discussion about passions and following your dreams. One of the gentlemen said to the other, "You're always full of excuses. You just need to try something. Do something. Anything." His friend replied that he feels stuck and he is too afraid to try new things because of other people judging him or not liking him. His friend asked him, "What's the worst that could happen?" And his friend went on to discuss how he feels many years have slipped by with no changes in his life through tears. And honestly, I shouldn't have been eavesdropping, so I didn't say anything, but I understand the fear and anxiety of pursuing the unknown. And one thing is for sure, nothing ventured, nothing gained. You've got to try things for yourself, regardless of what other people say. It'll probably be difficult, as most changes are, but you will learn a lot and grow. So try a new class, visit a new place, pick up the paintbrush and make a mark. You can do it, and I believe in you. This is a fun one to read because I feel like it really spoke to my mindset at the time. I had just left that full-time job to pursue being a full-time artist, and I just felt like, yes, pursue your dreams, do what you love. And I was just in this really super positive place, had this great sense of freedom, and I think you can kind of see that in this piece, sort of all these sort of conversations converging and merging to take you at the moment that you're at. And I think that maybe that's what I was trying to express. You can see I also used a brush pen, so it feels a bit more expressive than maybe some of my other drawings. But that was a good story to reflect back on. Okay, let's move on to the next sketch, which is... drum roll. I'm not going to do the drum roll because I'll be really loud. Okay, here's the next sketch. And I wrote, I had a nice view from my sketchbooking this afternoon at the Milky Way Cafe. If you know me, then you know I'm all into things cosmos. So when I heard there was a space-themed cafe, I had to check it out. Ends out it was more horoscope-based rather than science-based, but you got to take what you can get, right? I'm a Libra, but I ordered a Cancer instead because it looked yummier. I also got a milk matcha drink, which came with a cute little sugar star. The sugar rush afterwards definitely had me feeling like I was shooting for the moon. So, yeah, this is a really cute cafe, and I have been there now twice, and just the parfaits in Japan are out of control, like so good. And here's a selfie I took in the bathroom of there because I was wearing my NASA shirt and I was feeling very cool about it. But yeah, sometimes my sketches were a little bit more simple, like this one. Figure I probably had a busier day that day, so just did something simple and moved on. I think it was important to me to try and do at least one sketch a day. So, moving on to the next. Spent the afternoon in Odaiba today and found a nice spot by the water to have a coffee and sketch in the sun. It was an interesting area as it was several malls connected by outdoor walkways, but also several outdoor attractions. A giant mecha robot, a Ferris wheel, a car racing stunt show, a Statue of Liberty, and a Cinco de Mayo festival and music concert. There's also an onsen amusement park of sorts, but I passed on that in favor of being outdoors. I find it amazing that over and over I'm able to find moments of peace in such a dense, busy city. Yes, Odaiba is a very interesting place. Lots of shopping to be done in all these outdoor malls connecting to each other through all these complicated walkways, but you would definitely not get bored. You could spend more than a day there. When I went back in 2019 with my husband, we actually checked out this installation called Team Labs, which is really, really amazing. I really recommend checking that out, sort of this light installation, and it was really, really cool. Love Odaiba. Okay, let's move on to the next sketch. And I wrote, started this sketch earlier in the week at an open-air coffee shop. Something I've noticed is there aren't many outside dining options as in New York City. A lot of cafes are either in the basement of buildings or on the upper floor of buildings. In Tokyo, always look up if you're looking for a place to eat. Then I came to Tomo's in Chiba. Tomo is my sister-in-law. And I went to hers for the day and spent the morning finishing the sketch. There was something about the way that it didn't feel finished to me that day in the coffee shop. Tomo's dog Miran is very cute and hung out while I sketched this morning, although I don't think she was impressed with the results since she couldn't eat it. It's very pretty out here and peaceful. Good to recharge before I head down to Kyoto for the week on Tuesday. So yeah, at this point, I was finishing up my time in Tokyo and preparing for my excursion south. And the first place that I went was Kyoto. So let's get into some of my sketches from my time in Kyoto. And I wrote, I'm currently en route to Kyoto and decided to do a quick sketch. When I got onto the train, I quickly realized that I was unable to lift my suitcase because of spondylitis pain, and I tried to put it in front of me where my feet are. Then a salaryman sat in front and told me he was putting his recliner back, so I was feeling very stuffed and a bit down on myself for a moment. But luckily, the nicest young man sat next to me. He saw my situation and asked if I'd like him to lift it for me. Afterwards, he asked what stop I get off at, using his Japanese to English translator app, because he would be willing to help me take it back down. I'm very grateful for the kind people I'm meeting like him, and now I'm able to enjoy the ride, the view, and my bento. So yeah, kind of the way it is in Japan on the trains, like you can leave your suitcases at the end aisles, there's space for it, or putting it above you. But I had this ridiculously heavy suitcase, and I didn't know about this thing in Japan called suitcase couriers, where you can pay like $30 and they'll pick it up for you from your like hotel or hostel, and then they'll drop it at your next location for you like same day or the next day after. So I was just sort of struggling train to train with this ridiculously big suitcase. I don't know why I traveled like that, to be honest. But yeah, he was super nice. And I love the fact that he like took out a translation app to like, you know, talk with me. And I just appreciated the help so much. It was so nice. So this next sketch is actually from the same day. And I said, I arrived in Kyoto mid-afternoon and didn't have any major plans for the day. I thought I would check out Kiyomizudera since I'm staying close by. Well, that turned into a 4-hour walking adventure around the side of the river. Last time I was in Kyoto, I stayed in a ryokan in another part of town and didn't see this area at all, so I got absorbed in the little streets, temples, shrines, geisha wandering, matcha ice cream. It was all really wonderful. I stopped by the river to do my sketchbook work and I enjoyed the atmosphere. The weather was so beautiful and tons of people were sitting out with beers and snacks. There's a different energy from Tokyo for sure, but I can't put my finger on it yet. I have the next few days ahead, so I hope to discover more about Kyoto and figure out what makes it unique. yeah, that was a really nice day, and it sort of adds to that sense of freedom that I was talking about earlier. And it's just that feeling of freedom just continues to like well up more and more on this trip. And I hope that these sketches maybe somewhat express that. I don't know. You guys let me know in the comments. All right. This next sketch was very special to me. I wrote, "Does this sketch say pure happiness to you? I sure hope it does, because that's how I felt while doing this. I stopped for lunch to have some of Kyoto famous cold matcha soba noodles and a matcha parfait. I wrote this whole post and how I know I've been visiting shrines and temples, but tasting matcha whipped cream may have made me have a spiritual awakening. Well, my day got exceedingly more spectacular afterwards. I was wandering down a street in Gion and I saw a poster with Kusama's pumpkin, which said there was work of hers in a nearby spot. So I followed the trail to the Forever Museum of Contemporary Art, which seems to be a newly founded with a large retrospective of Kusama's work in their inaugural exhibit. Well, damn. It's the biggest collection of her work I've ever seen. There were no crowds, no lines, no time limits. And these are things I'm accustomed to when viewing her work. It's all housed in a traditional Japanese house, and you check your shoes at the door and wander around. And to top it off, there's a beautiful Japanese garden, which you can sit overlooking. And that's where I did this sketch, friends. I'm not sure I've spoke on here about this before, but in Italy many years ago, I stumbled upon a Caravaggio in a small unknown church, and I was moved to tears by the work and the experience. The same damn thing happened to me today. I stood on a tatami mat in a room filled with Kusama pumpkin screen prints by myself, and I cried, and I'll never forget today. So I'm not sure if any of you guys have ever had an experience with artwork where you just feel so moved by it to tears, but that was literally what I felt in that moment. And I think also the act of discovery, since going there, I wasn't expecting to see any of her work. And you may or may not know, she is my favorite artist. So just stumbling upon something that felt like a little secret and in such a traditional setting, it felt very, very special to me. And I can still remember that feeling to this day. Okay, moving on to the next. Today I hung out with my new friend Mel Had Tea. Thanks for introducing us, Maria. Mel is a really cool tea sommelier who is working on a tea farm here in Wakuza, Japan for the next 3 months. I will link her feed for you guys to check out in the description. I met her at the Golden Pavilion so we could wander the gardens and have tea there. A highlight was we were approached by school kids wanting to interview us. This isn't out of the ordinary, actually. At tourist sites, kids are pushed to practice their English by asking questions, getting you to sign their paper, and taking a photo. But they were so shy and adorable. I would have never had the guts to speak to foreigners in another language at their age, so you go, girls. After we left the temple, we got our matcha with gold flake ice cream, of course. Then Mel mentioned that there was a Starbucks with tatami mats near the Kiyomizu-dera, which is the neighborhood I'm staying in, and I had no idea. So we caught a bus over to check it out, and that's where I did today's sketch. Yes, that ryokan-looking place is a Starbucks, and I passed it so many times without realizing. Along the way, we had a lot of good conversation and had quite a bit in common, so I hope our paths cross again in the future. Thank you, Mel. So yeah, I did get to cross paths with Mel again when she came to visit in New York, and if you ever see a headshot of mine, they were took by her. And I would love for her to come visit again because I need new headshots in my new studio. But yeah, shout out to Mel. Definitely check her out. Linking her below, and yeah, just an amazing person. Okay, so the next one was from Naoshima Art Island, which is where I traveled to after Kyoto. So it's this sketch here, and I think I did this sketch the day after arriving, but I wrote, "This morning I opted to sit and draw instead of catching the early ferry to Teshima. I'll go for the afternoon and probably not see as much, but I'm okay with that decision. This is such a fascinating place. The artwork and nature really live together in all the locations. The museums themselves are built into the ground and are works of art themselves. Hence, why no photos, videos, or even sketchbooks are allowed when visiting most of the art sites. A lot of the installations here are also not for the faint of heart.
I felt my anxiety well up more than once experiencing a few of them, but came out on the other side feeling quite moved. There's a lot of play in the spaces with the natural light as well, so I can only imagine how much the season, weather, and time of day will affect how you experience the work. For instance, I've seen Monet's water lilies in different museums, but it was amazing to see them at the Chichu Museum yesterday. You remove your shoes and walk through a dark room, then you walk into another room with 5 of the paintings, 1 per wall, and the space is lit by natural light emitting from a square in the ceiling. The paintings themselves look framed, but are actually embedded into the walls, and they are big. You feel so small that the work almost swallows you, and you're swimming within the water lilies. I've never felt that way about Monet's work before. Then outside the museum, there's a small park with water lilies as a nod to what you've just seen. I really wish I could stay here longer, but I was lucky I was able to get one night at least. It was fully booked, and I kept refreshing the website every day till one room opened up. I hope one day I can come back. Yeah, so I've never got to go back as of yet, but if I ever get to go back there, I will try my best to bring you guys. As I said, they were very strict about photo, video, and even sketchbooks, but it really deserves to be seen if you are an art fan. It is an amazing experience, and I just loved every minute of being there. Okay, with that, on to the next. So this next sketch I did when I was on Miyajima Island. At this point, I had gone from Naoshima over to Hiroshima, and then I spent some time there, and then spent a day in Miyajima. And so I wrote, today's sketch could be my interpretation of what Miyajima is known for, and arguably Japan's most iconic landmark, the Great Torii. During low tide, you can walk right up to it, and then during high tide, it appears to be floating on water. It's quite beautiful, but it's only one of the things that makes this island appealing. I wandered in the rain for hours exploring, and was repeatedly struck by the natural beauty. I kept joking that Japan is a land of no Instagram filters, but it's actually true here. I also thought to myself today about what it means to solo travel, and I'll leave those thoughts for another post, but for now I just want to say, I had a lot of preconceived notions about this trip and myself, which I'm finding aren't true, and honestly, I'm really, really happy I'm doing this. Now that I've said that out loud, please don't let disaster strike. So, yeah, it was bucketing down that day, but the island was just so beautiful. And it's sort of one of those situations where a bunch of tourists flock in for the day, and then the quiet just happens after everybody leaves and the island's just silent. It also reminded me a little bit of Nara, which was another place I visited on this trip. I don't have a sketch from that day, in that there were lots of deer and they were willing to come up to you and try and take food right out of your hand. And I mean, I got bit by a deer in Nara, so they don't play. They will come right up to you, take food away from you, and they will bite you if you don't give it to them. Still, they were very, very cute, but scary. All right, let's move on to the next. Okay, let's see. Oh yeah, this was the next one. I remember blue because I had blue skies that day. Let's see what I wrote. I said, oh, here we go. I had blue oceans and blue skies today for the climb to the top of Mount Misen. Funnily enough, I had read that it's a 2-hour hike up and that you can get the ropeway down, and I wasn't really prepared to do that type of climb. But after speaking to a hotel staff member this morning, he told me, you can take the ropeway up, which seems obvious. I mean, what kind of ropeway would only take people down? Anyway, I asked him if it was hard to get to the top, and he said no. Well, he must be way more fit than me, and probably smarter. I didn't read anything before embarking on this particular adventure, figuring I'd just follow the signs. It was a half hour from the ropeway to the observatory uphill. And they don't sell water at the top. I mean, duh, who would open a business on top of a hill and have to lug all those goods up? I also discovered a sign afterwards that said, beware of poisonous snakes and bees. Poisonous bees? I'd been swatting bees away from myself. Anyway, lesson learned. Read about a hike before embarking on one. I rewarded myself with a matcha ice cream and a momiji manju afterwards, since I survived. A nice detail about the climb. Anyone who passes you says konnichiwa. I thought that was so lovely and definitely helped motivate me to push myself to the top. I got a kick out of saying it first to people on the way down and seeing their reaction. I also had several school kids yell hello in English when they see me. And when I say hello back and smile, they start giggling to each other. I really wonder what they're thinking of me. Anyway, I'm now en route to Fukuoka. I took a ferry to a local train back to Hiroshima, and now I'm on the Shinkansen. I should arrive in about an hour. The serious ease of travel in Japan is crazy, and I can't get over it. I'll forever be spoiled. That is something that Japan just is amazing at, which is transportation. And I had a JR rail pass, which if you're planning on taking the bullet train more than once while you're there, really, really recommend getting. You save a ton of money. It is super easy to use. You don't need to book tickets ahead of time. You can just show up, find the next train, show them your pass, and you are good to go. Yeah, Shinkansen for the win, 100%, hands down. All right, let's see what's next. Okay, this is the next one, and I wrote, here's a story unrelated to the photos I took today in Fukuoka. Yesterday on the Shinkansen, I sat amongst a group of obachans, which are like grandmothers. I remarked to the woman next to me I liked her manicure. She responded, yes, in a very stern tone in English, and went to go have a cigarette in the smoking car. And I thought, all right, well, she doesn't like me. And when she returned to her seat, she would turn to her friends to chat or just look forward. About 15 minutes before arriving, I noticed her fumbling with her phone and sighing. So I looked over, and then she looks at me and asks, "Dochira desu ka?" And I see by her phone that she was trying to figure out how to ask me where I'm from. So I've been sitting here the whole time thinking she hates me for being a stupid tourist, but she was concerned about not being able to speak English. So I tell her in Japanese that I'm from New York, but my brother lives in Tokyo and I'm traveling around. Then she lights up and we begin chatting. I ask if she was in Miyajima because I can see all the bags of treats that they have. She explains that she is a grandmother golfing group and they are traveling from town to town, playing different courses on the trip. Then she shows me photos of her family and her grandkids. One of her daughters studied abroad at college in New York, but she had never visited. And she's only been to California and Niagara Falls. She asks how old I am, and I tell her I'm 32. She says one of her daughters is 49, and that her daughter's daughter is 26. So then I say, but aren't you 26? And she just thought that was hilarious and replied, no, I'm 21. She then asks where I'm going, and I say Fukuoka. Then she tells me her husband is Fukuoka-jin, and she was very impressed when I showed her my photo of my husband. And that was about all we could pack into our 15 minutes. Yeah, that lady was hysterical because I was like, just the energy, I was like, oh my gosh, she does not like me. But she was just wanting to communicate and didn't know how. So I found with a lot of people in Japan, they were kind of hesitant towards foreigners or hesitant around me. But then if I said one or two words in Japanese, they would like really light up and open up and start talking to me. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's good when you go anywhere to try and learn a word or two. Not that I always practice that. I should practice what I preach, honestly. But it does add something to the experience of being somewhere, and it kind of shows respect to the people that you're talking to. Okay, let's see what's next. Oh, yes. My favorite drawing. I don't know. There's something about this sketch that I just love so much. Anyway, and I wrote, I made my way to Nokinoshima for the afternoon after sleeping in this morning. I'd read about flower fields plus a bunny park, and it did not disappoint. Of course, I had cold udon and a matcha ice cream. I found Fukuoka to be quite a lively city. I had this idea in my head of a sleepy beach town, but things become quite energetic after 7 p.m. The streets were bustling with folks ready to let loose on a Friday night after a long week of work. I remember that feeling of needing release after all that stress of the work week. Admittedly, sometimes I wouldn't even make it to Friday. But funny thing about vacation is time moves differently. I find I don't even know what day of the week it is a lot of the time. In fact, it occurred to me that yesterday meant 2 more weeks in Japan before I move on to Korea and Thailand. But that's probably because I've only been thinking about this trip day to day. I wake up, I look at my schedule, decide what's next. This is freedom, right? So yeah, at that point in the trip, I was feeling very, very relaxed into my routine and just going at my own pace, because I think going at my own pace wasn't something I had really been doing much of in my life back in New York. Okay, I'm going to skip past to this sketch, or this one. Yeah, I'm skipping past a few places over to Kanazawa. I think I had been in Osaka, Nagasaki, a few other places, but we're just gonna keep this thing rolling since I think I'm already 35 minutes into this edit. And I wrote, "It feels weird to write this post because today felt like 3 days rolled into one. I spent the morning at the Contemporary Art Museum, which had some fantastic exhibits. Of course, the swimming pool by Leandro Ehrlich. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Afterwards, I had fresh sushi at Omisho Seafood Market, followed by green tea and red bean dessert in Old City. When you see tourism for Kanazawa, this is the area you'll see photos of. Then I made my way through Kanazawa Castle and the gardens, which were stunning. After that, I headed over to Oyama Shrine for a sword fan poetry dance dedication. I was amazed at how coordinated those ladies were, spinning fans and swords at the same time. Wow. So after that, I knew I wanted to see lanterns being sent down the river, but it didn't quite go as planned. I had gone back to my hostel to get a sweater, and I saw a children's parade happening. They spotted me, and they started yelling, "Hello!" As I said, kids' favorite thing when they see a foreigner to do. So I stood and I waved for about 30 minutes as the parade went by. Then I realized I had 1 hour before the lantern event was over, but it would take 30 minutes to get there because no buses were running due to all the parades. So I hustled to the wrong bridge. Then I ran down to the other end of the river and caught the tail end of it. It was so beautiful, but very, very crowded. Then a group of lanterns caught a blaze and went into one of the catching nets, which also caught fire. So everybody had to be evacuated off the bridges. Everyone was fine, nobody was hurt, but everybody was just yelling, "Sugoi!" as the fire trucks were putting the fire out. Then I got some karage on the way home, so all was right in my world. I'm excited to see what tomorrow brings. Yeah, so when I went to Kanazawa, they were having a citywide festival called Hyakumangoku, which I did not realize when I booked my stay there. It just happened to coincide with that festival. So the entire city was just like in party mode and like so many different events and things to go see all over the place. So I did my best to make my way around and see what I could see, but it was my very first Matsuri. It was very exciting. I loved every minute of it. All right, we are going to now skip ahead to Korea as time is wearing on, and I don't want this to be an hour-long video. Anywho, so my first impressions of Seoul. Right off the bat, coffee culture is huge here. It's a shame I forgot my sketchbook yesterday while I wandered because I could have literally popped from place to place drawing all day. And it is so good, the coffee. I'm also amazed by the combination of old and new here. There's street art, boutique, coffee shops, splashes of color nestled amongst the old architecture and areas of greenery. It's a visual feast, honestly. And the people, oh my god, they are so beautiful and stylish. Also, lots of PDA between couples. They do say that people are passionate as the spicy food is, and I see that. I hope to see the old city amongst some of the art as well. Wish me luck navigating. All right. I wrote, according to this pink one, I hung out around the palace today. I had heard you could easily spend the entire day there, and people weren't lying. There's lots to see between the palace buildings, gates, gardens, and museums. I wandered by myself upon arrival around 12:30 p.m., thinking the next free guided tour doesn't start till 1:30, and I'd probably cover a lot of ground myself. Lies. I had barely made it anywhere and ended up running back to join our tour. Our guide did a great job and was happy to answer my questions along the way. Afterwards, I wanted to make my way to the Hanok village, and I was stopped by what I assume was some kind of government worker asking where I was going. I showed him my map, and he zoomed in on the Brazilian embassy, saying I was walking in the wrong direction and needed to turn around. So I apologized and thanked him. Then I walked the other way. I took about 5 steps and realized he was wrong, and I wasn't trying to go to that embassy at all. I took a different route and managed to find my way anyway. I'd seen lots of beautiful photos on Instagram of the village, and that's why it ended up on my list. I was disturbed to find lots of signs on fronts of homes from locals there saying tourists are ruining the area and they prefer them not to visit. It was a sad discovery for me, but completely understandable. I mean, who wants people talking loudly, taking photos in front of their home all day? Plus, all the vendors setting up their shop on the street, it's quite a commotion. So when I saw the signs, I immediately left the area. As a contrast to the heritage sites, I decided to visit the National Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art. There was an exhibit titled How Little You Know About Me, and had many fascinating pieces that revolved around the keyword Asia and the question, how do we understand Asia? It was extremely relevant for me given the trip that I'm on, but I feel it would be good to see elsewhere as well. I hope it can make its way to New York City one day. After the museum, I made my way back to my area and had a steak on a bagel for dinner, because why not? Okay, from Seoul, I took a train to Busan and I wrote, Busan, you were so cute and colorful, and it was a fun way to spend my last day of solo travel. I think it's important to challenge ourselves and do things that will take us out of our comfort zone, and I'll tell you the two biggest things that were on my mind before I started this trip. I was nervous about the unknown and worried about how spondylitis would hold me back. Japan really put me at ease quickly. I was a ball of nerves on the flight, so much so I didn't sleep. But the minute I stepped into arrivals, a physical ball rolled over and tapped my foot. I picked it up and handed it to a father carrying his young child. He apologized and thanked me smiling, and I told him no problem. I looked up a sign for the monorail and got a ticket where I needed to go and got on right away. As the first few moments passed by and I saw the scenery of Tokyo come into view, the nerves fell away. And as the days went on, I found myself becoming more and more excited about what could happen next. I would wake up each morning and ask myself, what adventure am I going to have today? And honestly, that is a question that carried me through this trip. I had a lot of notions about my physical capabilities and what my limits were, but I've gotten stronger. So, that was the end of the solo travel, and now we are moving into Thailand, where I met my husband. So this was the first sketch I did there. And I wrote, I arrived in Bangkok yesterday midday and met up with Andre at baggage claim. He had just flown in from New York. I was so excited to see him and I ran like a fool and I grabbed him, sobbing uncontrollably for what felt like forever. Once I calmed down, we got our things and grabbed a taxi to the hotel. As the city began to appear, I had to reprogram my brain once again to understand I'm in another new place. After settling in, we went for pad thai and other Thai yummies at a local place. Then we went for a walk and ended up in a shopping area and the red light district. It was a bit confusing at first because the shops, bars, and brothels all kind of blended together, but we managed to make it out of the area without any drama. Today we went to see the reclining Buddha and decided to walk over. We were becoming pros quickly at crossing the busy street, and we were both drenched in sweat because the humidity is really intense. So this sketch was actually from a few days into Thailand. I didn't end out sketching every day there. It's kind of same with Korea. I didn't sketch every single day I was there. But on this day, I had gone with Andre so he could train Muay Thai with a local person called Sanchai. And he's like a local Muay Thai legend. So Andre made an appointment and they got to spar a bit together and train together. And his staff and him, they were really great and made us feel welcome. And it was really awesome. I was really happy to see Andre get to do that. So as you can see, we're getting much more colorful, and that's because we had left Bangkok and we'd gone to Chiang Mai, and it was just a nice switch of pace compared to Bangkok. In Bangkok, you could walk in one direction for hours and never reach the edge, whereas Chiang Mai's old city is about a half hour from one end to the other, and it's a square. But we enjoyed our time eating at different locales, and we kind of went in and outside of the city. We went to see different wats scattered around the town. We also celebrated our 5-year wedding anniversary while we were there. And we never thought that we would find ourselves in Thailand for it. But, we loved every minute of it. I think it was a really amazing experience. While we were also there, we took time to go to a national park. And we'd read a lot online about people renting scooters and going themselves, but we decided to take a tour because with the weather conditions, we were kind of scared about navigating the jungle. We also went to an elephant sanctuary, which was really, really amazing. And yeah, Thailand is just unlike anywhere I've ever visited. And we spoke about how it kind of opened the door to the rest of Southeast Asia for us. So hopefully I can travel more in the future. Okay, friends, that's the video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please like if you did, subscribe if you want to see more art content, and I'm going to see you in the next one. Until then, stay well and stay inspired, my friends. Bye.